Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Sandy, Kshitij, Pramoda, Aditya, Lola, Varsha, Karan, and Sheshu, for coming together and discussing a very important topic, not just for Vibha, but for the entire social sector. And we are here today to discuss how corporates have a big role to play in reimagining how we can be a part of the transformation of public school system. And we're going to talk about a little bit about public education and in all parts of the world, but mostly focused in India. But mostly the discussion will be around how do we bring partners for change together? And what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and what are the capabilities that we all have collectively, and how do we collaborate? So that is the main focus of today's discussion. Why did we plan to do this on Rise World Summit platform, right? For me, Rise World Summit has been very close to my heart, and for Vibha too, because Rise World Summit focuses on building ecosystems and partnerships. And the way it is designed is to foster conversations at the beginning, foster systems thinking to kind of solve the big challenges that we have all over the world. And we can't talk about Rise World Summit without talking about Karen, who is the brains behind the summit. She is a powerhouse. Karen Chaiva is the Chief Impact Officer and MD at iDobro Impact Solution. She's the Managing Trustee of Rise Infinity Foundation and the Secretariat of MahaPiconet, which is an ecosystem of partners in Maharashtra. She's also the Senior Fellow in Social Innovation from Babson College, is also the convener of Rise World Summit. Apart from that, Karen Chaiva, she's a recognized social entrepreneur and advocate for social empowerment. She's honored for her inspiring social enterprise plan and selected for multiple awards like Lufthansa Pioneers of Tomorrow series. Karen believes in people-powered solutions to tackle global challenges, and she's passionate about partnerships for a better world. She actively promotes RISE values and frameworks for sustainability and inclusivity. Karen's commitment extends to learning, currently pursuing studies in human rights and peace. So she's a lifelong learner. Thank you, Karen, for giving Vibha a platform so we can discuss important issues and move the world forward.
Totally my pleasure. Thank you so much, Ashwini, for being a partner and not just a partner one time, but a long term partner. I think it's very valuable. Thank you. Yeah. So,
Um, I will give you a couple of minutes, Karen, to actually talk about RISE ecosystem and RISE World Summit and also the RISE values, and then a little bit about that, and then we'll jump into the topic of the day, which is why
absolutely.
public education and why corporate partnerships are a big important part of the change.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, firstly, maybe I should welcome everybody, including our wonderful thought leaders over here, our experts over here in the room, but also our viewers who are right now participating in the session, but also who are those on the platform and who may view it later on. So, a very warm welcome to Rise Summit 2024. And of course, there is so much to do on the platform, and I hope that you're going to take some time out to do that. In terms of, as you mentioned about the RISE values, I think for us, I have a very simple thing that I keep saying, it is the values we share that create shared value. So shared value as a concept has always been an economic framework more than social. The social element was more or less by the way. But for me, when I look at shared value, I think of it as value co-creation. And value co-creation comes from when you have values that drive you towards that. And so for us, when we looked at values, I think the other very important thing about values is that all of us have them. I mean, there is no doubt about it, right? Everybody has some value or the other. The problem is that it is contextual. So it is contextual based on age, based on gender, based on caste, creed, region, history, geography, you name it, and you can have a different way of looking at value systems. We, in fact, not just between us, but even within us, our value systems tend to change, right? And so understanding the values that drive you is perhaps the best way to understand how you relate to yourself and the rest of your world around you. And so therefore we came up with these 4 values, which we believe are universal, are the bare minimum that we should all think about relating to each other with. And that's the RISE values: responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and then ecosystem friendly. And that's why we say ecosystem friendly and not eco-friendly as it would be normally thought of. And the reason again is why we created the RISE ecosystem, is to say, how do we bring people together? Because we all know that individually we cannot do as much as we might want to do, right? And so if you want to bring that multiplier effect, then the only way to do that is together. And so, how do we create those kind of connections? How do we go deeper into understanding what it takes to really create systemic change? Because while we talk of systemic change all the time, we rarely think of systems thinking and systems innovation as the solution ahead, because there are just too many other assumptions and misconceptions around what systems thinking and systems approach is all about. So I'm going to stop you very quickly, but definitely once again, thank you all for joining us, and I'm looking forward to this conversation, because I know that the experts sitting on this table are definitely going to teach me a thing or two. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you. Let's quickly jump onto the topic and really bring those RISE values to light through our conversations. We all know that in general, poverty affects the quality of education and the kind of education disadvantaged children have access to. So Vibha wants to change that, and through education we want to end intergenerational poverty cycle. In India alone, there are 97 million children in poverty who live in households that earn less than $2 a day, just less than a cup of coffee. How do we impact these children who live in poverty? And poverty affects children more than it affects adults, because they are grown up in environments, they grow up in education systems that do not serve them well. And if we happen, and 100% of these children attend public schools. So if we transform the learning levels in public schools, we can create a lot of transformation in the lives of disadvantaged children, in society and country. And it's not just an India problem, it's also a US problem, it's also problem all around the world. And what is most important is to create that ecosystem, like Caron said. And Vibha has created this ecosystem of partners for change concept, where we know we can't do big things and sort of increase the learning levels of public schools in isolation. So Vibha, for the last 30 years, has been acting like a glue, bringing governments, bringing the teachers, bringing the corporates, bringing the donors and volunteers together. And we are a completely volunteer-driven organization. We bring all of these people together, glue them all, and kind of create that a partners of change cycle to create the impact that we want to create, right? This year, last year alone, which is 2023, we impacted 600,000 children. And we have big plans for now, for this year and going forward. Our goal is to impact 10 million children in the next 9 years. So it's a huge goal, and I know we can't do it alone, and we need corporate partners to come along with our journey to improve public education. So this conversation that we have all come together is to kind of help us look at how do we create those partnerships. What has worked, what has not worked, what are the different kinds of models we have to use, um, what is that value system that we need to create in our ecosystem so that we are accountable, transparent, and plow through all the challenges that come by when we talk about a corporate partnership. I just want to take a moment to thank everybody, all the experts on the speaker podium today, and also everybody else who's joined the conversation. Please feel free to add your questions and comments, and we're actively looking at it. And if you want to talk to our experts, we can pull you on the podium as well. And I will stop there, and I want to introduce the backbone of our India operations, who is Kshitij Nerurkar, and kind of introduce him and ask him to talk about what Vibha does on the ground and a little bit about the work that we've been doing so far. And thank you, Kshitij, for joining us.
Thanks, Ashwini.
Yeah. So meet Kshitij Nerurkar, a seasoned senior R&D engineer at Siemens with a remarkable 13-year journey in various research roles within Siemens. He holds a PhD in mechanical engineering from UMass, and he seamlessly blends his technical expertise with leadership. Simultaneously, he has been the director of programs at Vibha, and has volunteered in Vibha for the last since 2013. Kshitij has contributed significantly to creating a lot of action centers and chapters for Vibha in India. He's contributed significantly to bettering education for underprivileged children from his grassroots activities. And he passionately balances professional responsibilities, family, and volunteer work. Kshitij is actually instrumental in organizational building in Vibha India. He's created government partnerships and also fostered corporate collaborations for Vibha. And thank you, Kshitij, for joining us.
Thanks, Ashwini. It sounds like a lot when you put it in those words, but yeah, it's not that. I mean, I enjoy doing it. So yeah, I mean, let me get into what Vibha has been doing. So initially, about 30 years back when Vibha was established, the main goal was to help children in India and to act as a catalyst to empower any organization or person who has the mission to bring about a change in a child's life. And then from that point we've evolved a lot and our focus has changed, and we've narrowed down on working in the public education space because that is the education system that reaches out to the remotest areas across India, and also the all the different economic strata of society, of the society have access to that education system. So our main aim has changed, and we are now more involved in engaging and collaborating with governments and working on models which are trying to bring a sustainable change in the public education system. So our mission currently is improving learning levels in government schools by scaling proven models. And to achieve this, our ground team is basically working in two modes. We have a team of program managers who are located in different cities across India, and they initially work on identifying implementation partners and models which have a capacity to be sustainable and scalable solutions. And after going through a very rigorous selection process, we onboard some of these models and these partners, and then we start funding them at a small scale in a very smaller geography in order to test whether these models actually do have the potential to scale. And then and our program managers will start monitoring the program on a regular basis, from the fund utilization, from the activities that they have planned, all these kind of things. And then eventually we start approaching the government to show them that this model has been tested, it has what it takes to become part of the government system. And then we try to scale the program to larger geographies and also take it across states to multiple states across India. Just to give an example, recently in 2019 we started funding this English literacy program. We started in Maharashtra, one of the states in India, in just 4 districts. And since then, we've been able to take this model to 4 new states: Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, and now also in Delhi. And all of these are operating in different languages. So this model had to be modified so that it could be applicable for children whose native tongue is different. The second mode in which we have recently started working is by directly approaching governments wherever we have built our connections, and try to understand their requirements and try to identify where it is it that Vibha can pitch in. And an example of this is our program management unit. We have a PMU at Delhi, and the main goal of this PMU is to execute all the Delhi government's foundational literacy and numeracy program, which is known as Mission Bunyad, within the municipal corporation of Delhi schools, which are basically the primary schools. So now, seeing the success of this program, we are also trying to engage with more governments and start getting more programs of this type within Viba. So our eventual goal is going to be to act as a knowledge partner and not actually execute things on the ground. We would like the government to take over the execution of the model, right? And we become just a knowledge partner who's helping the government, but we will not have boots on the ground to execute. So yeah, that's pretty much how we've been operating and the direction which we are going in, about Vibha over the last, I would say, evolution over the last 30 years. Thanks, Ashwini.
Thank you, Kshitij. The reason why we wanted to talk about Vibha a little bit is to understand the context of where our heads are and where we're headed. And with that said, I want to introduce another very impactful person, Aditya Salian. He is been instrumental in some of Vibha's COVID relief activities during the second wave of COVID that was very deadly. But also, that's how we got introduced to him. And I know Texas Instruments has been a big partner for Vibha over the years. But also the Texas Instrument CSR department has been doing some impactful work in education as well. So we want to hear from him a little bit on how Texas Instruments approaches their CSR activities. And to introduce Aditya is an engineer turned corporate social responsibility manager based in Bangalore. With over 20 years of experience, he currently leads the citizenship initiatives of Texas Instruments India. Aditya has dedicated over a decade to CSR leadership, leveraging his passion and expertise for community development and delivering impactful initiatives that span education, skill development, healthcare, and environmental sustainability. His focus on creating tangible positive change has gained recognition and gratitude from communities he serves. Aditya, an avid tennis player as well, is an NMAM Institute of Technology alumnus in industrial and production engineering. and embarked a career in sales at ICICI Bank and Cisco. He's also actively mentoring students and advocating for CSR outside of his organization. His journey as an engineer to CSR advocate reflects a commitment to fostering a sustainable and compassionate society. Thank you so much, Aditya.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ashwini, for inviting me for this session. It's a privilege just to be here and talk, about the CSR activities that you've spoken about. In terms of what Texas Instruments does, as you mentioned, I take care of all citizenship activities for India. So, in specific context to India, we are focusing on two things. It's just a broad classification that we do. One is access to education, and the other is the quality. The quality of the education that we look at. Because globally, as such, TI has a stronger focus on STEM. For example, in Dallas and all that, we do a lot of work on STEM-related topics. But we have found that in India, probably the problems are slightly different. Indian students as such do not need that push to take up engineering or science as a stream, right? I think it's the other way around the problem generally in India. But as you have, I think, mentioned very rightly, right, the challenges are with the public education system as such. So we did, when we started, I've been with TI for about 10 years now. So when I started creating these projects, right, we looked at primary education at the 4th to 7th grade initially, and that's kind of where we are still, mainly focused on. And we do multiple projects related to when we say access to education, it's things like the midday meals that children require. This is something that is a very simple requirement, food. And as many of you may be aware, many students actually go to school looking for that one nutritious meal in a day or something like that. So this acts as sort of a catalyst to get them into school in the first place. Water, sanitation, drinking water. These are some of the other aspects that we consider are sort of a barrier for children to actually access schools, especially girl students in many cases, if sanitation-related facilities are not available in government schools. So this approach is towards supporting students' access to the schools. And the other part of it, as I mentioned, is in terms of the quality of education. In my limited experience, we have found that, of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but in general, I think government school teachers are highly underrated, I would say. Many of them actually are very passionate about the work that they do, but where they lack is probably resources and just the the situation that they are put into. You will find smaller schools in rural areas where they have to teach multiple grades. Because the number of teachers is dependent on number of students, not the number of grades that the school covers. So you will have one teacher for all the way from 4th to 7th grade. All the kids are there in one class. So their challenges are very unique, and we cannot blame them. So enabling them is one of the best things that I feel we can support the whole education system. So some of the things that we do is towards that, not just training. I think supporting them with either infrastructure related requirements or even additional teachers, for example, where required. So this does help in the overall improvement of the quality in those schools. STEM related topics also is something that, being a tech company, TI is definitely invested in such things. And we have tried to see that science-related subjects are sort of introduced to students at an earlier age. Some of the challenges that I think especially government school students face here is access to practical, like doing science experiments. Most schools don't have labs. So such issues, if we can tackle, it brings about an interest in students at an early age, and promotes that inquisitiveness in them, and taking up science as a stream in later part of their education journey. I think that I'll stop there and just that's kind of the summary of what we do at Texas Instruments India.
Thank you so much, Aditya, for giving us details on how you approach quality of education. It's very interesting because when we talk about education, we are all VIBA is focused on learning levels. That's one part, right? Teacher empowerment and learning levels. But there's a lot of other barriers that you spoke about, like the midday meals, the water, the sanitation, the drinking water, the government teachers teaching multiple grades. All of that are also very strongly related to quality of education. And it's very interesting to know that there are corporate partners that are tackling this from the other side of the view, right? So thank you. I do have some questions, but I think we will take that a little bit later during the general discussions that we have.
Sure.
So next I want to talk about, the role of corporates in the social sector, right? And I would like to welcome Sandy Marshall, and ask her to express her thoughts on this role of corporates in social sector, and also if she has some examples of good partnerships and kind of her experience in creating those ecosystems. Just meet Sandy Marshall. She's a trailblazer in nonprofit innovation and advocate for STEM education. Very close to what Aditya just spoke about. She transformed project scientist into an internationally recognizable force for change. She's the founder and former CEO of Project Scientist. And Sandy led the organization to impact 20,000 young minds across US and Mexico, achieving a 91% boost in participant confidence in STEM. So that's crazy. With a focus on corporate community engagement, she's forged multiple partnerships with Fortune 500 companies. Sandy's extensive service journey includes founding SMA Impact and leading the NASCAR Foundation. She's a certified death doula, which was very interesting for me. It's the first time I heard about it. And she's a hospice volunteer. And now she resides in Laguna Beach, California, blending her passion for nature with family and cherished companies. Thank you so much for joining us, Sandy.
Thanks for having me. Well, this is an exciting conversation, and I think it's my sweet spot. I love talking about corporate and nonprofit partnerships. So I'm glad that you invited me to be part of the panel. So I think, I appreciate what Karan said earlier about values, because that's really where it lands with creating a great partnership with a corporation and nonprofit and government. If you don't have the same values, it really won't be successful for your constituents. It won't serve those that you're trying to serve, and it just won't create that long-term partnership. And I come from the nonprofit side, so I know how challenging that is to have those values set and maybe have to turn some partnerships away or be very selective in how you create those partnerships, because we all want money, right? We want more money to serve more students, so it's a very challenging proposition to stand strong with those values that you have, and to hold up those values when you're looking for corporate partners. but I will tell you in the long term, it'll serve your organization that much better. I think one of the things that helped us, or what we learned with Project Scientist, because as Ashwini said, I started it from the ground up. So we didn't do everything right. We weren't perfect. We were always learning and innovating along the way. But one area, if you are going to go into those corporate partnerships, is to make sure that internally you have the capacity to serve them. And not only to serve them so that they have a good experience, but you can build on that partnership to gain more support through volunteerism, financial support, marketing, PR. There's so many ways that these large corporations with deep pockets can benefit your organization, and so many departments and volunteers. We've used them to building our website, to doing our Salesforce builds, to donating $1 million a year, to having thousands of employees host our girls at their facilities so that girls can see women thriving in the space, women that look like them. So there's so many ways that you can incorporate those corporations, and you really need that internal staff to take advantage of that. And I'd say one other thing with staffing is to have, if you're going to use the corporations as volunteers to be in front of those you serve, you really want to train them well, because like with Girls in STEM, for example, we know what we should and shouldn't say in front of them to inspire them and to build up their confidence. There's nothing worse to have a volunteer come in and say things that we don't want to say. So training and investing in your organization to take advantage and to make sure that you're serving your constituents well is really important. And I'll just give one example of, I think you asked for an example of a good partnership we've had. I'd say Train Technologies is a really good example. I think Project Scientist has had them as a partner for over 8 years. They started with them at like a $15,000 donation and getting some of their employees to come out to talk to the girls, and then for us to bring some of our girls to see one of their sites and do an expedition, we called it. But fast forward to, I think 5 years later, we got our first $1 million commitment, and they helped us scale our organizations to multiple markets, including Mexico. We're engaging thousands of their employees a year, sites across the country. So for us, it's not only the funding so that we can exist, but it's also those leaders and those internal employees that volunteer to inspire the girls. We have their whole Salesforce department that helps to build that out for us. We have a marketing and PR team. So there's multiple ways to engage those partners, but I think that's probably a good example for us in that it's really shared values. They're looking to inspire the next generation. They want to hire female talent, so they're trying to build up the female talent through us. And maybe one last thing is the internal ERG groups. I see Lola here. We'll probably talk about that, but that's been a big success piece for us as well, is especially because I think 98% of our girls are from Black and Brown households. So we are looking for the Hispanic and Latino groups, the Black groups, the women groups, any ERG group that represents our girls internally at a company is usually the first sort of layer that we go to for support and engagement, because that's what they're there for, and they get it. So I think, those new ERG groups that have been developed are a good place to start as well.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for sharing those nuggets of wisdom, Sandy. What I took away from it is that there should be a strong shared value created between the nonprofit and the corporate. Also, there is this mutual engagement that we have to get going over the years, and it's not just the money portion of it, but there should be some shared engagement programs created. So there's that partnership, a true partnership that's going on. Thank you. I have more questions, but I will, ask questions to the other panelists, and then we'll come back. And I want to take a minute to introduce Pramoda and ask her about her thoughts and challenges during engaging corporates, right? She just stepped in to kind of revamp and grow our CSR partnerships in India. And I think she can kind of talk about those challenges um, that in general we face in the Vibha faces while engaging corporate partners. Um, Pramoda is a data strategy, analytics, and operations expert in life sciences space, experienced and authentic leader, adept at driving data-driven strategies and operational solutions. She's led transformative initiatives optimizing technology and people to align with business priorities and successfully headed a business unit portfolio of 10 individuals with 6 products in Genentech. And currently, she's recognized for fostering cross-functional partnerships and promoting an inclusive culture committed to advancing team potential and achieving collective success. She's also very passionate about children's education and is a firm believer that education is the key to societal transformation. She volunteers with Vibha and Asha for education. She leverages her professional expertise to help expand CSR operations for India and Vibha India. And currently, she's the principal owner of Oswald Incorporation. Thank you, Pramoda, for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be in such a company with so much vast knowledge. So, like Ashwini said, like I've been a volunteer with Vibha for the past 7 years or so, and this year, or rather last year, is when I started dipping my feet into CSR and CSR operations. So, from my perspective, I think what we are trying to set up within Vibha is like this whole reporting and like how you mentioned, Sandy, it's really required that we have our organizational setup and all the reporting that is needed for CSR, and that's what I have been helping the team with. And I mean, I'm barely an expert on this space, but I would just say where I see the opportunity is, what gets measured gets improved, right? So from that perspective, I think we are working very closely internally also to uh, build what's an infrastructure. I think Kshitij and team are putting together dashboards and KPIs. I would say that's one of the things that needs to be enforced a little bit more on the CSR front. Like I think there is a clear mandate of how much a corporate can contribute towards the CSR. I think on the other end, when we want to think about reaching kids and improving the outcomes, and outcome based setup is something that I am passionate about looking at, and where it goes, and how can we do that, because in getting data is clearly a challenge in any place, especially in India. And that's where I see how can we work more with the corporates and with our NGO partners who already have some robust setup in measuring the impact, and that's where we are working on focusing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pramoda. You so rightly put that what gets measured gets improved, and also how data-driven strategies are very important for us to report back to the corporates that we have onboarded to help us with this transformational journey that we are on. But thank you for also dipping your toes into the CSR. I know you have already created that technical prowess and in the whole CSR landscape, and there's a lot of learning to do. But uh, we look at you as one of our experts within Viva. Thank you. And I also questions, but I think I will I first want to introduce all the panelists, and the next one I want to hear from is Varsha. And I know Varsha has been a volunteer for several years and has been a donor for several years. And she comes from Dallas Action Center, where we have a huge youth chapter. But quite recently, she's sort of started looking into grants for Viva and grant writing. And I would love to know her challenges and her perspectives of the the landscape of grants that are available, and how do we start approaching it, and what are the challenges that comes with starting to approach grants, right? And also I know there are other people who have, like Sandy and Lola, who have some sort of perspective of what that is like. And I want to kind of you get those conversations going. And so Varsha actually is a dynamic leader in the healthcare IT space in Walmart. She specializes in interoperability at Walmart. She is a senior manager in software engineering there. She's leading initiatives like value-based care. She's previously managed a team of 50 plus, delivering solutions to home health and hospice providers. So there is some connection with Sandy here too. Her integration with 300 plus vendors, facilitating 30 million transactions monthly, benefiting, upwards of 50,000 patients. Varsha holds a master's in electrical engineering and has multiple US patents as well. Her impactful contributions include achieving certifications for meaningful use of electronics prescription and showcasing her commitment to advancing healthcare technology and patient care. So she comes from a very compassionate work already, and so a great fit for Viva. She's been deeply committed to creating corporate partnerships to improve quality of education of disadvantaged children. Thank you, Varsha, for joining us, and would love to hear your challenges that you've faced so far when you started digging into grant writing.
Sure. Thank you, Ashwini, for having me here. I do, when I look at this panel, I feel like I'm the baby here. I just got started. Like Ashwini said, been a volunteer with PIPA for many years, but just hadn't looked at what it takes to be in the leadership. And I'm learning a lot over this last year about, the amazing work that all of these guys do. And the effort that goes in, it's truly humbling, and I'm proud to be part of this team and to be helping wherever I can. I started with looking into all sorts of corporate engagement here in the US. Lots of takeaway from this session already, hearing Kshitij and hearing Aditya, Sandy, some of the things that you said highly resonated with me because I've been experiencing that as well. I think one of my biggest challenges have been identifying grant opportunities, right? So, I thought, initially there's a few strategies that I explored, starting with, how can I get into networking with the CSR team at Walmart? That's where I work. So why don't I network within my company and figure out, how do I go about navigating that? Some of the challenges there was Walmart being, such a huge company. They tend to localize their CSR initiatives, right? So what they do is, they have the retail sector, they have the technology sector, they have so many, they have Sam's Club, they have so many divisions. So rather than having, like a corporate umbrella, what they do is they tend to localize their efforts. For example, on the retail sector, each store is given a budget to say, okay, I'm going to give you this much money for your initiatives, and then you're free to take proposals and do with that what you please. And one of the bigger challenges there is they have historically tended to focus on local initiatives. Like they want to see what you're doing, kind of like Aditya talked about. The challenges here are different. And when we, present material about Biba, it's not all, they don't always identify with it, because they haven't seen it. They haven't. So the challenge has been, how do I connect? How do I, merge value systems? Just like Karen said, how do I find that common ground? With child initiatives, I grab their attention that way, but then I haven't had a good way of showing them immediate impact. Like, what did we do with this grant that you're going to give me, right? So that is one challenge. I've heard of similar challenges with companies like Toyota as well. Toyota, and we have volunteers in other companies that, say the same thing, like they want to hear about local impact. And Sandy, the work that you did where you involved, the corporate representatives with the girls that you're targeting, I think that was a great way to get engagement. But I would love some discussion on, how do we leverage big corporations here to maybe even get us, connected with their CSR initiatives in India, if that's an option. Or, help us get in more with the local chapters here, right? That is one of the bigger challenges that I have encountered. I'll stop there and pass it on back to you, Ashwini.
Thank you so much, Varsha, for very well summarizing the challenges that in general we have faced. So historically, I don't think Vibha has done very well in the grant sector. And Lola knows this. I've been talking about it. Sandy knows this as well. But I think there's a disconnect because of the localization of the CSR funds that's available and the seeing of the impact. So I think there is some takeaways that I am seeing probably get connected to their India counterparts. Or, for example, how do we take them on a virtual journey? Or how do we, what kind of events can we put together? Like, I think my brains are working towards that. Thank you, Sandy, for actually talking about those impactful connections and the events that you created together with the corporates. That helps to move forward with that kind of thinking. And I have two more people here, Lola and Cheshu, and I would love for them to talk about way forward, right? And I think one thing I want from Lola is to ask her about how to build a DNA of generosity within an organization, and how do we identify those organizations who have the DNA of this social impact and generosity, and with our pitch, how do we move corporates, and how do we understand what they care about, and how do we show what we care about, and that sort of conversation, Lola. I think a loaded question, but I think it'll be very impactful to hear your work as the director of human resources, and you've been a part of Google and YouTube for a long time. Currently, Lola is the director of human resources for YouTube product, UX, and trust and safety. She's a seasoned senior HR professional with proven track record of driving organizational effectiveness and human capital management, with over a decade of experience at top tier companies like Netflix, YouTube, Nike. Lola excels in influencing leadership styles, fostering high performance culture, and strategically partnering with diverse client groups. Her expertise lies in organizational design, labor and employment law, and executive coaching. So Lola's keen ability to assess behavior and competence has consistently contributed to the success of businesses and their leadership team. I have known Lola through the Alt MBA course, and I was just blown away by her her whole concept of building compassionate leaders. Thank you, Lola.
Ashwini, thank you so much, and thank everyone for having me here on the panel. I feel very honored, of course, and appreciate Ashwini's invitation because I'm blown away the moment I've met her by Viva and this organization that is led by 1,000 volunteers. I think that when we begin to think about like a model of what an organization of compassionate action-oriented people can do, Viva is the model, in my opinion, when it comes to this. And I think that, I love the challenge of the DNA of generosity because Ashwini has afforded me the opportunity to study a bit of her company and this company that has made such an impact already. But I think it's not just I think that's where the DNA lies, right? When we start to understand who are the people that drive organizations, who are the people that, are super selfless when they are spending their time, working all day, as many of these experts have already shared around, the work they do just in this idea of what we might call a day job. But I think the root of that is in this topic around education and public education. The root of this is in the ideas of like our values, right? Because I think, companies, whether they're for profit or nonprofit, and societies are made up of like humans that, are trying to like really, live out like their best attributes, and their purpose and understand like why we're all here. So I love this topic because, I think a lot of what we're talking about and what I'm passionate about is the concept of learning equity. And often when we think about learning equity, we are talking about support and resources and access. And I think those are really important, especially when we think about, our most marginalized in society, our most, underprivileged, those with the least resources to just have fundamental education. But I think when we start to think about our role as we kind of matriculate and become become corporate citizens, I think we really have to think of learning equity as enablement, exposure, and experience. I think that's where, regardless of this initial opportunity, and this is solving for 97 million, children in poverty. Reading and education is fundamental, and of course, platforms like Google and YouTube that give access and give are critical and important. But I think when we start to think about partnership, as it really gets down to, a lot of what we're solving for are the same people that are in the workplace. And the same people that come from various socioeconomic backgrounds. And, Sandy alluded to it when we think about employee resource group or affinity groups, they're made up of and they're created out of a need to identify and feel a sense of belonging in a workplace, that sometimes doesn't see them, right? Or, overlooks their background. And so the opportunities become challenging. So I think, one of the key opportunities is that corporations, and the people in them, since we're talking about how do we tap into this DNA of generosity. Generosity comes from, people who see themselves in others and can relate to different journeys that others have gone through. And so I think exposure and experience becomes an opportunity to partner. It becomes an opportunity to see what happens once people get into, education systems. Sometimes we lose lose a lot of traction because they have to face other challenges in their own life. And so I think the second thing, when we think about this is like, how do we compel people like ourselves to think about intentionally addressing the issues, whether that's, I think Aditya mentioned it, right? Socioeconomic, housing, stabilizing like someone's life so that they can also like not just like leverage that opportunity or to education, but also kind of grow in it. And I think this idea of like really addressing what we see is, these models of like what it means to partner and leveraging the people that are like in employee resource group and affinity groups are about an opportunity to see themselves and see impact. And I love what you're asking, Ashwini, about how do we think about like localizing what it means for someone to see where their contributions, where their volunteer, where their funding is going. It's really hard, and people want to relate to that. But I think a lot of it is really just in storytelling. I don't think that that most people in the workplace are so significantly different that we can't tap into our own backgrounds and understandings to see where their contribution, where their volunteerism, where their funding goes. So I think that's an opportunity. I think in you and I have talked a lot about this because most people that are volunteering and doing nonprofit work are doing the work. And they're just out there doing the work, securing the funding, securing the grants, and then going back to the community they're serving. And like we're talking about with Viva, we're talking about, how does that like story get told, and how do people start to understand the impact, of the nonprofit impact of the work. And I think that's really gets to this question of like, the simplest thing is securing funding, not simple in the sense of securing it, but in terms of like what a company or corporation can do, right? They can provide funding, but I think the model of impact is really the challenge of like where I think we could do better in terms of that intersection. So, I don't think I can spend a lot of time on DNA of generosity, but I do think that, compelling people to understand, I think bias, privilege, and their judgments around what is prestigious. I don't think the challenges of most corporations are that different. I think we have to stop thinking that, you know, um, the best and brightest minds come from the most prestigious places, quite frankly. We have to like address these like ideas that, privilege and prestige really are the root of what is happening. If we want to have the most innovative thinkers in the world, we've got to look at the places that don't have the right, like, or, brand or socioeconomic background. So, I think that's where the opportunity to ensure there's more exposure and experiences is to, address things that inhibit, right, and prevent advancement as well. And that 100% happens in the workplace every day. So I think we just have to call it out a little bit more. So thank you, Ashwini.
Thank you, Lola. I mean, the bit about how we can tap into backgrounds of people who, in the ERG groups or the corporate themselves or our volunteer network, is and weave it into our storytelling is such an awesome way to look at how do we connect with corporates. Surely going to take this back to our marketing and content creation team to start looking at, finding those best minds within corporates, within our volunteer network, and who have come from backgrounds that are not a likely background, right? With a background of privilege, I think that would help us a lot. Thank you, Lola. Thank you
Yeah,
for talking about it.
that's right out of your shared values, right? That Karen talked about.
Yes,
It's really at
yes.
the root of it, and that's exactly what affinity groups are mostly made out of. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Last but not the least, and such a privilege to have Sheshu here with us today. Sheshu, thank you for being with us. And thank you for stepping up to actually helping us create some of those networks in a very creative manner for Viva. Sheshu has been the founder and CEO of M Connect. He's a serial entrepreneur. The entrepreneur mind behind M Connect initiated a marketing revolution in 2015, where addressing the needs of small eateries, always focused on helping those niche small markets. He's um, MConnect has evolved into a huge marketing agency, now leading restaurant and retail marketing technology company with a plug and play infrastructure and point of sales integrations. Its platform transforms customer interactions so that innovative and creative DNA comes through. And uh, we're so glad to have Sheshu on our Viba volunteer team. Sheshu has an INSEAD MBA, and he boasts a decade plus career with Fortune 20 companies and startups, including ventures like iPathshala and Desi Soda. And Sheshu basically is known for his thinking out of the box and spotting opportunities and strategic alliances. Thank you, Sheshu, for joining us today.
Thank you, Ashwini, for the invitation, and thank you, Karen, for providing such a wonderful platform. So that, like again, as I said, it's great to see so many people with different opinions and different experiences coming together. And obviously, everyone is here to kind of like talk about corporate. How corporates can partner or help in the sustaining or basically the public education, right? From my point of view, the way I look at it, it is, again, going back, listening to all people talking about, right? Like the way I perceive it from a corporate response or CSR point of view, right, is that, again, even at the individualistic level as well, right? It is two things that actually drives everyone. At least that's what I see. One is what I call as the self-preservation, and the second one is the perpetuation. Like, for example, if Varsha is talking about Walmart's, obviously it's a multi-billion-dollar company, but they are actually looking at the local level, because they are looking at the perpetuation in terms of, obviously they cater to the needs of the people at the local level, and they want to make sure whatever they are giving is impacting those people to who they cater to. That is it's again the self-preservation and the perpetuation comes into play. And going back to Lola's point of storytelling, right, is whatever you do at the end of the day, if the story that you're telling resonates with these two goals, right? If I'm going and telling, like, again, I'm just giving an example. I live in Dallas too. If I go to the Walmart and say, I'm going to actually impact 50,000 kids back in India, the general manager of that particular, it's a good story at the end of the day, but it does not resonate with my agenda of I have to impact, even if it impacts 10 students within the next school, I'm going to give that $10,000 rather than giving $50 or $500 that will go and impact 50,000 people. Again, I'm not, yeah. So it's a combination of both the storytelling, and I absolutely, Lola, I completely agree with you in terms of everything has to have a story, right? Because that's what, like, again, and then it has to also resonate with the agenda of whether it is an individual as well. Like we as people participating here, we have our own agenda, in the sense that, going back to Ashwini's thing about the DNA itself, right? Obviously, people who volunteer, who take out time, or who are part of the social initiatives, they have a specific DNA, so as to say, because they want to give something back to the community. It is a kind of a perpetuation. The quantity of the perpetuation is the higher, in the sense that I want to see my kids prosper. I want to see the society prosper. That's how I actually look at it, in the sense that the perpetuation part. And obviously the self-preservation is, at the end of the day, if if it feels good, if I donate $50 or if I'm donating 1 hour of my time, that it's a feel good factor for me as a self-preservation tool itself. That's why I volunteer or I give back to the any particular cause, whether it is education or whether it's animal welfare or whatever be the case, right? And again, from a grants perspective or from a or even if you want to go and pitch before any corporates, right? Like whether it's with TI or anything like that, storytelling plus identifying this story, whether it is in line with what they are actually looking for. At least that's how I see as an entrepreneur that would actually bode well for Vibha as an organization and also bode well for that particular organization, which is giving actually the time and effort and all those things. So.
Yeah, thank you, Sheshu. Thank you. Those two words, I think we will send it to the marketing team to make sure it's aligned, right? I loved how you talked about self-preservation and perpetuation. A very different way of looking at how do we tell our story. Thank you. And I have
Shwini,
a
sorry, can I just a couple of minutes if I can just I wanted to make a point, just to what Cheshu and Varsha said. Is it okay if I come in
yes,
here?
now it's open floor. Please
Okay.
feel free to ask questions. So anyone, open mic. I have a few questions for Aditya as well, but Kshitij, take it away. I know you have
Yeah,
to
so
leave.
I mean, it's not a question, but it's more about like our experience from what you guys said is it's pretty much similar in India as well. I mean, depending on what kind of uh, corporate you approach, right? For example, if it's a steel plant or something that is local, then they also are looking for that local engagement. Like they want their employees to go and see this, for example, the school that they are supporting. They want to go and see the school. They want to go and actually be part of that change. And so when we go with these models that are working at scale, at large scale, working with governments and across multiple districts, uh, making that story, stitching that story together in a way that it appeals to those kind of organizations becomes very difficult, because they want to actually go and see that. And if it is a model that is working in say 2 districts or 5 districts across the state, it's very difficult for them to go and identify that specific change. And also, when you are working in the public education space, it takes at least 3 to 5 years for you to even see any measurable change in in the KPIs and all that. And with corporates, many a times it's more of a short term change that they are trying to see what are the differences. So I think building the story is extremely important. So I just wanted to add to whatever Sheshu and Varsha said, yeah, from the Indian point of view.
Absolutely. And I learned that during my grant, when I wrote the first big grant for O9 Solutions, right? Those were exactly the kind of things they asked, because they asked to fund a certain genre of project. Like, we want to fund these kind of projects only, and we want serious employee engagement. They wanted us to propose, how are you going to engage our employees so they are involved in the day-to-day process. So there were very specific asks of them, and they were all in line with what you said, Kshitij.
Can I just add, Varsha and Kshitij bring up a very important thing that, we've highlighted as well, because I spent 13 years with Walmart, and 9 years with Walmart, and their store, was really about like what they call a store of a community, store of the community. And
Yes.
so the hiring practices of the company have to be about, even to just work in that area or have a store there. They went through a lot of the like local government, right, to set up a store. And so their initiatives have to align to that. And they want to have their employees, come from the community, and those employees then become, these volunteers and align to that. So I think it's highlighting a really important point about aligning, the ask, right? The ask from a nonprofit to the agenda. of the organization that you're seeking. And sometimes we look at the just what the company does and not really understand like some of what their journey too has been to, establish business and what the motives might be there. So I think it's an excellent point in terms of like that short term versus long term, mission or impact of it. Just to highlight that.
Yeah, it's not immediate in our case.
It's not. Yeah.
And just one more thing, going back to Kshitij's point in terms of even in this case, right? Like if I'm like the short term versus the long term, right? It's the dichotomy. At least I see from Vibha's when I used to obviously I've been associated with Vibha for almost 20 years plus. So the dichotomy I would see is like if I go to any particular individual or even to an organization, they are actually looking for, if I'm going to give you $1, what is the impact right away? And they want to measure in terms of data, right? In the sense that, okay, I'm going to feed 5 kids. It will give education for 5 people or 5 kids for a year, right? Those kind of data points, which is very immediate in the sense that I can give this $5 and it will translate to an immediate short-term goal. But if you look at what Vibha is trying to do, it's more of a project finance kind of a thing, like where you're trying to put like going to a World Bank and telling them that I want to create like a Suez Canal, which will take 20-25 years. For that one, I'm going to lay foundation today, right? But that foundation, you will not be seeing that after 25 years is when you will actually see all of a sudden big ships going through that Suez Canal in terms of that, right? Like again, so from my point of view, again, when I used to volunteer, as I said, if I go to a particular person, they would say, where is this $1 going to? Will it basically feed 5 kids and all those kind of things? Vis-a-vis where we are trying to say that I want to lay a foundation where I can impact at a grander scale in terms of making changes to public education or something like that. And for that, the kind of partners you would need would be the kinds of the World Banks kind of a thing, where the vision is completely different in the sense that you want to go to a particular, maybe the CEO, or I'm just giving maybe a random example here, right? Going to Bill Gates and saying that, listen, like you have like $10 billion lying in your wallet. Give me the $10 billion and you will be seeing after 20 years what this $10 billion will be doing. Because at that point of time, the person who can understand the vision in the sense that, yes, I know that this is not going to impact 10 kids today to feed 10 kids and all those kind of things, but it will basically make sure that there is universal education available for each kid in India 20 years down the road kind of a thing. So again, that's where, right, in the sense from a fundraising perspective, if I go to a particular person, again, that's a dichotomy, right? In the sense that I'm going to a particular Walmart store and they would basically say that, okay, I'm going to give you $50. It's going to impact these 5 kids. I'm happy with that. Whereas you go to the CEO of Walmart and say, give me $50, and then it will basically impact in future. Everyone will actually go to Walmart. I'm just giving a random example again, Walmart India or something like that kind of a thing. And that's where people at different levels see different things in terms of the impact and all those kind of things. And one last thing, Varsha, to go back to the grants itself, right? Given the fact that Walmart has obviously as a big stake in Flipkart, I'm not sure if you have actually approached that angle and trying to say that, listen, like,
I'm looking into it, right? So they have, I don't yet understand the CSR part of India Walmart yet. I know they have locations they have a huge offices in Bangalore, Noida, and some other key places. It's not all over India. So I'm trying to understand that actually. Yes. Very valid point, Sheshu. And
I
to
have
grow networking and connections over there. I have some connections on the technology teams, but they're not aware of the CSR part of it as well. At the same time, I have a friend who works for Deloitte in India. So I'm pursuing that with him as well as to what is that, what kind of CSR work do they do? Do you have an understanding? So I know Deloitte USA mostly defers to their India counterpart for any if we are asking for participation in any nonprofit work in India, they tell us go talk to Deloitte India, right? So
What
yeah.
I'm hearing is, I think, localization. How can I make an impact in my backyard? Right? That's what they're looking for. I know, Karen, you wanted to talk for a little bit more with that, but I have one question for Aditya. Aditya, what kind of structure do you want to see in a nonprofit, and where you know that they would be a good partner to have for DI, right? I think your perspective as a CSR manager here would be valuable to understand how do we structure our CSR team.
Okay. I think I'll go back to what Sandy mentioned about shared values. When we look for partnerships with nonprofits, basically the first key thing I think is that sharing those some common values, right? And a lot boils down to what that particular corporate is looking for and how your value systems align with that. I think there was talk right now about a long-term vision versus short-term, local versus maybe spread across in different geographies. You can also look at, for example, in the Bangalore context, right? Many corporates want to work within the city. Not too many want to go into the rural areas. It comes down to that, I think, a little bit when we look for partners, whether what we are really looking for in terms of execution at the ground level, whether the partner really brings that to the table. So I don't know if there's a specific structure. I think your question was more about the structure within the organization. I'm not too sure about whether that really is something very high on what we look for. It's more about the alignment with the basic value system, and in terms of a particular project, whether it aligns with what we are trying to do. As I mentioned, I think TI globally looks at education. 65-70% of our funding globally goes towards education, and within that, if there are specific areas, because again, I think there is always a lot of requirements, obviously, in the social space, especially in India. Definitely, there are a lot of things that we can do. From a corporate perspective, I think it's difficult to sort of diversify too much. Then we spread ourselves thin too much. So we will choose certain focus areas, and if the nonprofit is aligned with that, then that is one of the criteria to sort of start partnership.
Thank you, Aditya. Quick question there is: do you also look at employee engagement as one of the characteristics of choosing a nonprofit? Sorry, I think we lost Aditya there.
So obviously,
sorry,
there
Aditya,
is
we lost you. We lost you there for a
okay.
second. Can you repeat what you said?
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. So I was just saying that volunteering is, I think, a very important aspect. It again depends upon, I think, from corporate to corporate. But as far as I know, especially in the Indian context, it's definitely important for employees to really relate to the projects that the company is getting involved with. We also we try and do a little bit of a mix, in all aspects. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of geography, also certain projects so that they are within the city and it has some visibility for employees, whereas a certain portion of our funding can go towards rural projects. In that similar vein, we know that there are certain projects which may not require volunteer involvement as much, right? But in other cases, we do try to ensure that there is some meaningful engagement. I mean, as much as possible, we don't like it to be a sort of a forced, we don't want to enforce volunteering upon that particular project. But as much as possible, if there is a meaningful way to really, for our volunteers to really contribute to a project, that is an important factor that we consider when we take up partnerships.
Thank you, Aditya. I think that kind of aligns to everything that we were talking about and what Sandy spoke about, how engagement is a big part of keeping our corporate partners together.
I think so. As part of exploring that employee engagement, one of the things that we did last year, I think we managed to do that with 2 or 3 corporate entities here in Dallas. We did employee engagement events with them. Even if not just to spread the mission and vision of VIPA. So we did one at a Container Store, we did one at Walmart, and we did one at another company called Alex Partners. So it's just simply to spread the word, and at ADT as well, ADT Home Security Systems.
When you said events, Varsha, does it mean that is a local, like you got your youth chapter together, kind of the local volunteers would go do events there, or was it like showing them the impact, taking them back to India? How did that work?
Both. So the models vary. With the Container Store and Walmart, it was mainly an adult engagement event, right? So with Walmart, it was an employee engagement event. They were having their annual Diwali event. So VIBA organized something that we do here as a local initiative is that we have hand-painted diyas for sale that we sell, that part of our youth does for fundraising. So we initiated that as an adult event during the event at Walmart. What that gave us is 2 things, right? Huge exposure to VIBA within the Walmart Dallas office, at least. And, we were able to play, informational videos about VIBA, hand out pamphlets about what we do, even engage volunteers. The other thing is, Walmart allows their employees to submit volunteer hours for any organization that's registered, and they pay a certain amount per hour of volunteering. So everybody that came to participate in this diya painting event were able to submit hours towards VIBA. So that was something that we tried last year. And one thing I realized is even though there was a lot of engagement within the office, not everybody is diligent about going and logging in their volunteer hours, right? So, and you can't force them, just like, like Aditya said, you can't force them to put in their hours. You can just say, hey, would you mind doing this? And I think we got about 50 people to enter in hours. So that was good. It was, but what that did, I think, is like the stepping stone, right? People know about VIPA now at Walmart, and they know to come to me to ask questions. So those are the 2 things that we were able to do last year.
That is pretty creative. I think that's one way to enter into an ERG group to say we can help organize events. It's not in the local area of impact that you're looking at, but here's a large community of volunteers who could engage with your employees to create that meaningful change. Yes. I think that's powerful. Thank you, Varsha. I know, Karen, you had something to add, and then I want to go back to Sandy for a question, but yeah.
So very quickly, I think 2 big things. This morning we had the plenary on the CSR, and we had people from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, we had private sector, and then of course we also had Niti Aayog. And 2 big things that came, and yesterday was SDGs, so which was kind of like a continuation on that. So two very quick things I would say. When you look at corporates with whom you want to partner, and I think Shesh was absolutely right in that is a great analogy, and I'm going to use it, and I'll remember you when I use it, so I will give you credit for it. But yes, I think that's a great analogy to understand that what is it with it long term and short term, because those are the exact words the gentleman used in the morning, saying that it is disparate, it is local, and it's non-sustainable. These were his exact words. So you have
Can
these
you
two
repeat that,
extremes:
Carol? Can you repeat that? Sorry. Just can you repeat those sentences?
disparate,
Okay.
disparate,
Uh-huh.
localized, okay, and non-sustainable. So they're just
Okay.
small pilots or they're smaller projects, which as long as you can fund it, they'll survive. Otherwise, they just fall apart, right? So he said, so you have two extremes. On one hand, you'll have this kind of projects, which is more often the case. And this is from data, okay? This was a very hard session, fully based on data and facts and things like that. And then you have the other extreme where people want at scale, corporates who want to support projects which have only large numbers, really, really large number. So how do you build that kind of value co-creation that says, yes, we want numbers, okay, but it has to go deep as well, right? It's not just about the numbers. But of course, we want scale as well. And that's where the convergence comes through. Like how the other 2 points that I want to make, how can you link this to government priorities and the policies that will drive it would probably help you a lot better to get traction. Number one. Number two is more often than not, we present ourselves, or the third point is that we present ourselves uh, more from a point of view of a single lens of one SDG. So, and when we talk about VIBA, we'll talk about education and we'll obviously talk about SG4. How can you link that to the other SDGs? And Ashwini, how passionate I am about the interlinkages. Yeah. But the minute I've seen this time and again, every time we do an impact assessment or we help with designing interventions, the minute we start bringing in the lens of interlinkages of the SDGs, suddenly the scale does not seem small anymore, and the impact is at all the three levels of output, outcome, and then impact, long-term impact, right? Unfortunately, we use the word impact very loosely in the social sector, and it's one of the things I cringe about. But yes, if you can do that, you're truly able to show the Swiss Canal, and then kind of create the kind of vision or shared vision that then you can bring your corporate partners to come into. So I just thought I'd like to share that from today. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Karan, for sharing that. We'll pick your brains on that more. And I feel like I'm thinking there needs to be one kind of pitch to the corporates that we need to do, but also tweak it to show local impact. And we have to go after folks that are looking at that scale in their DNA, which then again goes back to identifying those organizations. So I want to ask Sandy, how now a hard question maybe, but not as hard for you because you've done that. How do we then identify? How do you go about identifying these organizations, and how long does it take, and what kind of support system do we have to build at an organizational level to kind of go even identifying?
Yeah, I think so much work is done on the front end that you just don't even know, right? So before you even have that meeting, you're doing a ton of research on the internet, talking to maybe some, employees internally that you may be connected to find out what's going on. So there's so much work that goes in on the front end to understand, are you a good fit? And who is the person internally? Like when you talk about a company like Walmart, it's so big, as you mentioned. That's where I immediately went to the website and I was like, okay, what do they do in India? Who's the person? So as I'm researching it right now, I'd be like, okay, who's handling this Walmart Make in India program? I want to talk to them. What are their goals? how can I solve any problems for them? Because with a company like Walmart, you really got to go in and find the right person. And it's like Google. Well, there's so many buckets of money and different departments that you can align with. It's just overwhelming. So if you can get to that, keep doing your research and getting to that right person or right program or right department. That's what's really important. The other thing I just was going to mention we were just talking about is not everybody may be your partner. And it's hard as a nonprofit to believe that because you're in it every day and you're so passionate about it and you see the need, but not everybody in their CSR, goals is a fit for you. So to know that, and even for me, I've had examples where they focus on STEM education of corporations. I'm going in, I'm like, this is going to be great. And I've heard them say to me, well, we want to affect as many girls as possible for as little money. And at the time, I'm like, well, our program's expensive. It's not cheap because we're investing in a long-term strategy to create female scientists. It's not, I'm not concerned with the number of girls we serve. We're going deep. So I had to say no to that partner. We're just not a good partner. But I have been able to go back to that partner to pitch other programs we now have that may not be as deep, like an event, to have them sponsor an event that's going to hit, 3,000 women in STEM in 1 hour or 2 hours. So as your organization grows, you might have some programs or some events or some things that you could pitch that aren't your core program. I don't know if that makes sense, but when you're smaller, you only have a few programs to pitch. As you grow, you can have more programs that might be able to fit that organization. But I also don't be afraid to walk away, because if it's just never going to be a good fit if you're trying to manipulate your program to fit their needs. And if you're strong in what you're trying to do, I would say don't give in. Just move on to someone else. But research the internet. And I mean, even like today, I took a snapshot of you all. I'm going to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'm going to see who you're connecting. I've gotten more sponsors and partnerships via LinkedIn than anything.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Pass on that picture to us too, please. I said send the picture to us as well, please.
And me too, Sandy. I was so focused on hearing and doing this, I've completely forgot about pictures. But Sandy, what I'm hearing, and then just looking at Sheshu and Varsha here, we should create like a research team. We have like 1,000 volunteers. Why can't we just give some of these projects to our youth volunteers or some high school volunteers, or even start university programs where we can have internships or interns doing some of the research work for us? I think it's just so much of win-win from both sides, and we have the manpower to do this kind of research, but we haven't creatively looked at it. So thank you, Sandy. I think that's what I take away from doing that identifying part. But we also need to have counterparts like Varsha and Sheshu, and all of us need to sort of guide these research programs, or identify the first, here are the 4 or 5 people that I think you should start researching. And then they could come up with a good, like a white paper, not a white paper, but a research guide for VIBA, create those guides for us. Yeah. And I think we are at the last 15 minutes. I want to take time to just, go back to the larger picture of how do we make corporate partnerships successful. And I think I've learned a lot of learning more to do. And I'm going to tap on all of you, in the next coming few days, especially Keron, from your insights about all the plenaries and all the sessions that you have attended. and kind of go back to Sheshu and Varsha to create those teams within Vibha. And Lola, of course, is engaged with us, and she's helping Vibha kind of understand our own strengths, right? We are completely lost sometimes. We need an external person to tell us who we are sometimes. And so thank you, Lola, for helping us. And that we'll really use that in our storytelling. And Sandy, of course, a lot of learning that we have to do from you. And Aditya, I think our India team might reach out to you for support in terms of how do we tailor our programs, not just for TI, but for the entire CSR landscape. But before we end, I want to take some last thoughts from everybody around in this group here. We have not a lot of questions, but if more questions come by, I will send it out later as an email follow up. So take it away. Open floor.
I've got one question. Ashwini. I know we talked about, impacting 10 million kids in the next so many years, 10 years. Do we already have, or do we plan on creating, like a roadmap of types as to what our goal is to get there? So, here's our journey and what are our milestones to be able to tell that story, right? So the first thing somebody will ask me is, well, okay, you have a 10-year plan. How do you plan to get there? And what is the immediate, results that we can see? Because I think reporting back is very critical in a CSR relationship. Right? Keep that engagement going. We have to be able to say, at regular frequencies what we did and how we did that. If we're proposing, hey, give us $1 million, like, okay, we're going to use the first 100,000 here, and here's how we're going to use it in 10 years.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Harsha. I think great question. We are building that roadmap with the India team, and sort of we know that there are 10 million children. We know that there are 97 million children, right? But where are those 10 million children that we have enough government relationships with and how do we expand? So those are the kind of questions we are talking to the India team, and then we have so we are building that roadmap. I think it should be out in the next 2-3 months.
Perfect.
Yeah. Last thoughts, Aditya, Lola.
Okay, I'll chime in, even though you did not ask me, Ashwini.
No, it was open floor. I was just prompting Seshu, but please go ahead.
So going back to this, right, within 9 years, reaching out to 9 million plus kids, and also my earlier conversations, right, and also your thought about creating some kind of a research wing, the ability to reach within that goal of 9 million. Again, I'm not saying if we reach that goal, that would be awesome. But obviously, realistically speaking, also, right, the best way to reach is obviously through partnerships. And partnerships obviously need resources. That means people who can see the vision of, okay, I'm going to impact $9 million, 9 million kids. That means I'm going to spend $1 million so that you are at the end of the 10th year, or even maybe like going back to Varsha's point, right? Like year 1 is like 100,000 people, year 2 is 2 million people, year 3 is like 4 million, and year 5 is like 10 million people, as an example, again, from a business plan perspective, right? So combining all these aspects, having a research team which can focus on organizations who have this long-term vision, because again, as I said, right, if we go after the local Walmarts, we will not be able to get to that 9 million people, right?
No.
So that means maybe going to the Bill Gates of the world kind of a thing, who have that vision, right? And or the corporates or something like that. And going back to Lola's thing of storytelling, which will resonate with their overall goal, right? Like, again, I'm just giving a lame example here. Like, let's assume this way: Walmart is trying to expand their footprint in India, right? And that means they need to get the brightest kids who can actually join their corporate team in India as an example. So if we go and tell them the story saying that I'm going to spend like $1 million of this one on the public education so that these people can experience, going back to your earlier question, right, of how they can experiment with science or something like that today so that they can understand the practical knowledge. And then when they graduate out, they will actually have pretty good skills about implementation or whatever will be the case, so that you can hire them. Again, I'm not saying that all these people will go, but at least then they would actually look at that goal and say that, okay, I'm looking for people in India, this $1 million which I'm going to spend, even if I get like 100 people joining my team with not to say sound minds, but capable minds, right? That would actually help me in the longer term of me becoming like a $3 trillion company, right? That goes back to the storytelling, along with the self-perpetuation or self-preserving and the perpetuation goal, right? And then which is in line with our goal of reaching to 9 million people. Obviously, this is all like at a very high strategic thinking kind of a thing, rather than looking at the low level data numbers of 5 kids and that kind of a thing. I think we should look at from an overall strategy standpoint of view. That's how I should look at least that would be my thought process when we are looking at the 9 million kids that we as Vibha would like to impact.
That's
Again,
a great
I,
idea.
I think
but
Linking it back to, what could benefit them. That's a great thought. Yeah.
I think this conversation has been just so great. I think when, Seshu is really highlighting something about like this long-term piece we keep going to and the partnership and relationships, I think we can't underestimate that. And I think aligning this idea of, who are the people that are at a stage or at a position that can, that are looking for what the organization is trying to do in the long run. I think that takes time, but I think, just knowing Viva, you have the organizations look at the credibility of the nonprofit, right? They look at what they're trying to do. I think Sandy's talked about that. And Viva has so much, data, both like qualitative in terms of experience and the behaviors and the impact they've done. And you build on that, I think, to build this, but aligning to either an individual, a team, or at a like high level organization, to this like long-term partnership is really an important element of this kind of, I think we're all kind of saying, the Swiss Canal of like the canal of, this the future. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of intersecting, where an organization is really trying to reach their goals in alignment with where other companies may have a more long-term vision. And I think we underestimate how much access is the same. Who the relationship and that long-term partnership becomes part of the strategy, right? It's like a twofold strategy of like your short-term, initiatives and events that are building, who you are as an organization, but then this kind of like long-term vision, and that requires a little bit more, like, we've said research, but also like targeted, campaigning, targeted focus around, who is going to be aligned. And I think we come back to companies and say, there are so many like employees, individuals that are a stage of life that are also trying to define their own impact. It becomes from this like self-preservation to actual perpetuation. Like, what will my long-term impact be? What will we walk away and say my career was? And these become like opportunistic times to engage, I think, corporations or executives around where they can build a partnership with an organization, depending on that stage, both for the organization, nonprofit, and for the corporate organization. I think it's a really important takeaway in terms of a twofold, or multifold approach.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Lola. And going back to what you're saying about tapping into people who are at that stage of life, interestingly, there's a lot of people who moved from India to the US, and in those Esther years, where now they're at a stage where they want to give back. So I think we are at a very good moment in the Indian American sort of diversity group, where we can actually tap into those meaningful conversations with people, and because they understand what impact is, and their life's impact, and so I think we are at a good stage. Aditya, any last comments?
I just like to highlight here, I think, in terms of your goals, also Ashwini, Vibha's goals of reaching out to 9 million, 10 million students, and I feel one of the key things would be government partnership. What Sheshu was also mentioning about the long-term vision and the analogy of the Suez Canal. I don't think in Indian public education system you can build the Suez Canal without a very strong partnership with the government. And corporates can play the catalyst role, as you have called out in the meeting, this thing, right? But individually, at whatever corporate you take today, I don't know if on their own that impact can be scalable to that level. The government is the key player as far as the public education system in India is concerned, and that just cannot be ignored. Working with them, finding the right solutions that they buy into is, I think, a very important factor, which can then get you partnerships with multiple corporates as well, and help you towards that goal of really impacting more number of students.
Yeah, totally, Aditya. And I think we're on the right path, meaning we start all our work with government partnerships. We are in 12 states in India right now, and growing. And when I mean by 12 states in India, there could be one state, like, for example, Andhra Pradesh, where we are in 10,000 schools, versus in Tamil Nadu, we are only in like 500 schools, right? But we have the partnership going. So there's a lot of room to expand. Right now, we have a PMU within the Delhi government education system, which means that they invited us to create a project management unit or program management unit within their education department. But we haven't scaled as much as we could. We are just in that clinical trial phase, and there's a huge room to expand for us, 1.2 million children. So I think we do have a roadmap, and government is the only way, like you said, that we can get to that goal. And we realized it way before, like 10 years ago, and we've been building up to it. And now I think we have created those partnerships. So thank you for reiterating what we were already thinking of.
Ashwini, you've gone on mute. Ashwini, you've gone on
Oh,
mute.
sorry. Yeah. Last thought, Karen, and then if you can help us close the session, we would be
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, first and foremost, I already said at the beginning itself that I'm going to learn something, and that was absolutely without a doubt in my mind, and that's of course been proven right? First and foremost, I'll go with the Suez Canal. But beyond that, many more things that I've learned hearing each one. But I think above all, to be in awe of Vibha, because I agree with Lola that, this kind of model is definitely not the norm, right? And not at this kind of numbers of volunteers on a constant basis. It's not. And of course, Shishu, 20 years, wow. So it's not about just one-time volunteering. So it's a fantastic model, and there's no doubt that we should be, looking forward to getting as many people to come on board. So I'm really pleased and really happy that we've had this conversation at the Rise World Summit. I do want to also share one more last thing from the Rise World Summit that could be of some interest and value. That we launched the toolkit, right, at the opening plenary. And Ashwini, you know about this. And I think some of the models over there could be of some value, I think, especially the one on the celiac model, which I think is very important for anyone, because you can start with research, but if you don't know how to take it forward and what do you do with it, you're not likely to end up at collaboration. So it starts with what we call sharing, and then it takes you through the steps that takes you up to collaboration. So what are those steps you need to go through? So are the steps of engagement, it's called that. So yeah, I'm very happy to share that Koru toolkit and the celiac model, because I think it will definitely be of some help. Yeah. And now I'll kind of close with thanking first, of course, our thought leaders and experts. At the Rise World Summit, we don't say they're just speakers, they're thought leaders for us, and they're experts, who come with a great deal of insight and a big heart. So it's not just about the head, but it's also about the heart. So thank you very much. Secondly, of course, I need to thank our viewers for being with us, for staying with us, for understanding the value of information and knowledge that can be shared and taking that further, of course. And last but not the least, the team that helps us make this all, the partners that help us make this really a successful summit. So thank you very much. And of course, a last reminder, we still have 2 more days to go, so don't go away as yet, and join us definitely for the closing plenary, where we have the Rise Awards that are given away, and this time we have a very special set of people receiving the awards. So do stay tuned in, and we look forward to welcoming you back again at other sessions. Thank you once again. Thank you, Ashwini, once again, and thank you, Aditya and Varsha. Good night.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Karen.
Karen. Thank you,
Bye.
Thank
Rashmi.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.